Hello everybody, this is a new devlog about the game I'm developing in the Godot engine, a colony simulator set in an open-world fantasy setting. Today I want to share the progress I've made over the past few months. The biggest news is that the game finally has a name. I went through a lot of different options and eventually settled on Blight Shall Fall. It sounds decent and is relatively easy to remember. I like the ambiguity. It could mean doom is coming, or that the blight will be pushed back and the world saved. In the end, it's up to the player whether the world can be cleansed or not. The blight itself is the central element of the game's lore. It's the main threat the player will be fighting against with the help of their colonists, trying to save the world from its spread. The story begins in a world that had managed to live in uneasy balance with its own conflicts, until an invasion from another dimension shattered everything. It started with the appearance of strange structures, later called altars. Everything around them began to die, infected by a mysterious disease that came to be known as the Blight. Guardians, terrifying creatures, roamed near the altars, keeping everyone away. But eventually, people discovered that the altars were also portals to the realm of Blight. If activated, one could travel there and try to stop the invasion at its source. But that's no easy task. With the world descending into chaos, long-suppressed threats began to rise. Undead creatures emerged from their catacombs and started attacking the cities of the living. Wild animals, infected by the Blight, turned into feral monsters. And from the realm of Blight itself, twisted beings began to pour into the world, weakening what little defense remained. Most cities were eventually overrun, turned into crumbling fortresses. After the fall of one such city, a few survivors managed to escape and flee far beyond its borders. They stumbled upon an untouched magical rift, an ancient source of power. Now it's up to the player to decide. Can they bring order back to the world, or will all hope be lost? That's the general idea for the game's backstory, though the final version will likely be more refined and dramatic. The mechanics for altars are already in place. There will be several scattered across the map, each with its own level of difficulty. Some can be destroyed early on, while others will only be accessible in the endgame. To activate them, players will need a special item, an artifact of some kind. I haven't fully decided what it will be yet, but one thing is clear. The strongest altars will require artifacts crafted using the most advanced technologies available. I'm toying with a mechanic inspired by Skyrim's soul gems. Remember how you had to capture a creature's soul at the moment of its death? I always liked that system, and I might adapt something similar. Once an altar is activated, one or more colonists can be sent into another dimension, the realm of Blight. To do this, another colonist must remain behind as a sort of gatekeeper. They'll be the one maintaining the portal and, if everything goes well, bringing the others back. Hopefully alive. After clearing out the enemies in the Blight realm, players will gain access to a special structure called the Binding Monolith. Deactivating it will stop the corresponding altar from spreading corrupted ground and spawning monsters in the main world. I haven't decided yet whether the infected land will slowly heal on its own. Probably not. It'll add more challenge that way. But there will be a way to manually cleanse it. It won't be hard, just time-consuming. So the sooner an altar is destroyed and the corruption is halted, the less cleanup players will have to deal with later. Altars essentially serve as checkpoints for the player, a test of their gear and tactics. There won't be long dungeons or puzzles inside them. They're more like combat arenas with minor variations. As for puzzles and labyrinths, those will definitely be in the game too, but they'll appear in the regular world, in places like ancient ruins or forgotten temples. These can be explored gradually and looted at your own pace. The realm of Blight, on the other hand, doesn't contain valuable loot or rare treasures. Altars should be sealed as soon as the colony is strong enough, because the corrupted land spreading from them causes serious problems. It disrupts logistics, prevents plants and animals from spawning, attracts monsters from the Blight realm, and can even infect colonists with a dangerous disease. If the player delays too long in shutting down the altars, they risk ending up in a barren, lifeless world with no way to gather the resources needed for further progress. I've tried to make the realm of Blight feel as different as possible from the regular game world. There's no day or night here. The lighting is always dim and eerie. I decided not to include roofs either. The whole area takes place inside a towering temple-like space where the ceiling isn't even visible. Building is disabled in the Blight realm. You can't dismantle structures or place new ones. It's all about honest combat. Right now the environment feels pretty empty, and I'd love to add more objects or at least some decorative elements, but I haven't yet come up with any solid ideas. I thought about adding some kind of flora, which would look nice on tiles without floor coverage, but if I add that, I'd have to let players harvest it, and I don't want the realm of Blight to offer any unique, gatherable resources, aside from monster drops. I could probably add something like lakes with some strange liquid, but that's for later, once I implement water in the game. Maybe also something like low walls or fences. That would add some tactical variety to combat, since you could hide behind them. But that'll also only be available later. So for now, the location is still pretty bare bones, but it's already fully functional. The realm of Blight is home to strange and terrifying creatures. Sometimes they slip into the regular world, wandering near the altars and attacking anything alive. They can't handle normal land very well, so they tend to stay on corrupted ground. I decided to draw 3 of these monsters right away to help set the tone. They're way too strong for the early game, so I'll tweak their balance later, but their abilities are already planned. These are the first monsters in the game and the first real threat to your colonists, which makes testing the combat system much more fun. I gave them classic RPG roles: a tank, a ranged attacker, and a caster. That trio already makes fights a lot more engaging. Meanwhile, the combat system keeps getting more complex. After some testing, I decided to move away from a non-target system, where projectiles are physical objects that don't care who they hit. That's how it works in RimWorld. You can accidentally shoot your own colonist if they step into the bullet's path. But in my game, combat is more layered. There are melee fighters, ranged units, and support roles. It's not fun if ranged units have to hold their fire for fear of hitting their allies. Even worse, monsters might end up killing their own frontliners just trying to shoot at your colonists. So now the combat works more like in Warcraft-style games. When a bullet is aimed at someone, it'll usually reach them unless they take cover behind a wall or low obstacle. You can't just hide behind a teammate. Sure, it's less realistic, but realism isn't the goal. What matters is making combat fun. Before I started designing the Blight Guardians, I spent a lot of time thinking about what they should look like. One thing was clear: they needed to be strange, and each one had to look different from the others. At the same time, I didn't want them to resemble enemies from the regular world. I already know there will be undead and something like magical golems in ancient temples. In the end, I came up with insect-like purple creatures. I'm not sure I like how they turned out, but at least I managed to draw something weird. Maybe I'll figure out how to improve their designs when I add more blighted enemies. If not, I'll just leave them as they are. On top of that, I improved the fog of war system. Now there are areas that remain hidden even when a colonist is standing right next to them. To reveal them, you'll need to break a wall or open a door. This trick is used in a lot of games, and I really like how it makes exploration more exciting. And one more cosmetic touch. I'm not sure if it's obvious, but I changed how the ground shader works. I got rid of sharp tile edges and stretched a large texture over the entire surface of a terrain type. It feels a bit cozier now. The next big thing I finally got around to is sound. More specifically, sound effects. Music is more or less straightforward. I'll just have to buy some background tracks later. But sound effects are something I already need now, and I have to figure out where to get them. I don't want to make the sounds myself. I don't know how, and I'm not interested in that kind of work. So I'll need to buy them. Ordering custom-made sounds isn't an option either, because I have no idea what exactly I'll need or how many, and I need to start adding them right away, matching sounds to visuals and vice versa as I go. When I was making my old 3D game in Unity, I had bought several big sound packs from the Unity asset store, but after my seller account got banned, I gave up on that project. Still, I kept those purchased assets, and they would be super useful now. So I tried to figure out whether it's allowed to use those assets in a different game engine. I did some research, and it turns out the situation is pretty unclear. There's a fairly recent response from a Unity employee saying it is allowed, but only if you ask the author for permission. I honestly don't get that stance. Back when I sold models on asset stores, people would sometimes message me asking if they could use my assets in certain ways. I usually just replied however I felt like at the moment. I always thought it was up to the buyer to read the license and understand what they could and couldn't do with an asset. But apparently, Unity leaves that decision to the asset creators, with no clear official rule. So, for now, I've decided to just go ahead and use the sound assets I already bought. Maybe later I'll try contacting the original creators, and worst case, I'll replace them with new ones, or buy alternatives from a proper asset store that isn't tied to a specific engine. That's the plan for purchased sound effects. But in 2025, there's another great option. When I started making this game, I didn't even think I'd be able to generate sound effects using AI. But I gave it a try. And honestly, I was really impressed. Sure, sometimes it takes a lot of back and forth with the AI. It can take forever to get a 1-second sound effect for a single ability. Still, it's way faster and easier than digging through asset stores for the perfect sound. I've been using 11 Labs for generation. You can create sounds there for free, though you'll need a license if you plan to use them commercially. You can also generate voice lines, including using your own voice in any supported language. For example, in this video, it's my voice that the AI used to create speech in English. So yeah, working with sound effects is much easier now. It's not perfect. Sometimes I can spend a whole day and still not get the effect I want, but most of the time the results are good enough.